This whole thing about punishing people in past administrations reminds me more of a banana republic than the United States of America. We don't criminally prosecute people we disagree with when we change office. There are lots of questions that could have been asked about the Clinton administration failing to recognize the war on terror. They did not. The Bush administration went forward, and that's the way our country should. The president said he was going to be forward-looking. Now he has opened up a stab in the back.
You know, Mika,
wow.
That's we talked about FDR and the internment of 200,000 Japanese Americans. You had, of course, the Sedition Act of 1918, where Wilson threw people in jail if they said something bad about the flag. Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. But more recently, Bill Clinton. You know, if the right wing had had their way, I'm sure they would have tried to find the 3 times that Bill Clinton had a chance to take out Osama bin Laden. Saddam tried to offer it to him. He wouldn't take him. What if we had had a trial trying Bill Clinton and the administration for 3,000 deaths of Americans? This is not a good place to go.
It's not, and now we're at a really, really tough spot because I'm not sure how, as Pat put it, we put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah,
and I think it's going to be politically damaging, as well as a lot of other things.
Let's bring in right now moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, David Gregory. David, you're going to be talking to Robert Gibbs this week, and this is certainly something White House doesn't want.
They don't want it because look how quickly it gets partisan.
Explodes.
And it does explode. It can envelop the rest of what they're talking about. They don't want it. But, you know, you're right. They're being pulled in a lot of different political directions. And there are a lot in there on the left, the president's political base, who say, no, we want accountability here. We want this debate. And we actually want to hold people responsible. I mean, you get the whole argument that I've talked to senior White House people who say this is over the top. But look, this idea of we were just following legal guidance from the Office of Legal Counsel is not good enough. Some of these people should be pursued. The administration has said different things about this in terms of what they want to do, but you're exactly right. They don't want this as a political matter. But I will say this: you said there was no looking back. Look, there was the 9/11 Commission. That absolutely looked back.
Right.
And it looked back just on those matters about what the Clinton administration did or didn't do. The problem is this question of debating how we treat prisoners, how we treat the enemies. You know, John Yoo, who is the Office of Legal Counsel, said this is a third category. They're not prisoners of war. They're not like anything we've ever seen. They are in a separate category of enemy. We've got to figure out how we treat them differently. Well, if that's the case, then that's the kind of debate about what do we do in that circumstance. As a country, how do we debate the treatment of people like that?
Well, that's a great point, because a lot of lawyers would say these prisoners shouldn't be afforded the same protections as the Geneva Convention because they're not soldiers. And again, this is a nuanced debate, unfortunately, that gets lost. I'm an attorney. I obviously wanted America, like most Americans did, until it became fashionable to once again embrace civil liberties. But I wanted to be tough on the terrorists. But the lawyer in me, as I saw the years ticking past, 1 year in prison, 2 years in prison, 3 years in prison. You know,
doesn't seem right.
Even a conservative lawyer said, okay, when are they going to get their due process? Can we hold them for, I remember asking Rudy Giuliani, I want to be tough too. Do we hold them for 3 years? Without a lawyer? Do we hold them for 5 years? There has to be an end to this. This is the discussion we need to have. There's not just you're evil, I'm
And not only that, the question of waterboarding. You know, John McCain says it's not that complicated. It's torture. As a moral question, as a policy question, that holds a lot of weight for a lot of people. This is a guy who knows a thing or two about torture. As a legal matter, I've talked to lawyers representing some of the people involved in this. They say, wait a minute, how is it we actually define torture, and how is it that waterboarding is consistent with that? That's a legal debate.
And are all of these
interrogation techniques that were pursued by the CIA, are all of those things torture? Aren't there some things that are not torture?
Well,
I mean, this is the question.
And that's the thing. Let's go down that list again. Like, for instance, the Washington Post. And I love the Washington Post, but I'm going to knock them around a little bit here. They had an elite talking about terrorizing a prisoner with an insect because that was his phobia. They were talking about putting a caterpillar into a box. They ended up not even doing that. It was just a memo saying, well, maybe this is a possible idea. You take it from a proposed memo where people are saying, will this work, will that work, to suddenly we're all terrorists and we're all thugs.
Well,
we aren't having a rational conversation. That's what bothers me the most.
Isn't the big question here, you've raised the issue with Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats who were briefed about this. Let's talk about the politics at the time. It's just like the war resolution before Iraq. You know, there were Democrats in Congress, including those who ran for president, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, John Edwards, and others. They were for it. They gave the president of the authority, Joe Biden as well. The question is, at a time of crisis like after 9/11, how do leaders respond? How do they demonstrate leadership? Do they have the ability to stand up in that pressure cooker and say, hey, wait a minute, I think we're going too far here? Or did anybody want to be responsible for standing in the way of something that might work, that might deter another attack?
There was no way. Let's face it. Let's face it. And we're